Part 1. The Routine and the People. Every Sunday morning, James walked to the little cafe on Maple Street. The cafe was quiet, with soft music playing and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. There were only a few tables, and most people who came there were regulars. James had been coming to this cafe for years. He always came on Sundays to meet his grandfather. The cafe wasn't fancy, but it felt warm. It felt like home. Two young girls worked there, always moving quickly between the tables. Their names were Sarah and Mia. Both were students, working to pay for their university studies. They smiled often and laughed softly behind the counter, even when they were tired. Then there was Eddie. Eddie was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and always had a warm smile on his face. He wore an apron. Eddie had worked at the cafe longer than anyone. He greeted every customer with the same kindness, remembering names, favorite drinks, and little stories people told him. But he had a special care for James and his grandfather. Every Sunday, when James and his grandfather walked in, Eddie would bring them their usual drinks without asking. James always got a black coffee. His grandfather preferred tea with a little honey. Sometimes they would talk to Eddie for a few minutes before sitting down. They talked about football, the weather, or old memories from the town. Eddie enjoyed those moments, and so did they. But James had a bad habit. He was always late. Every Sunday, his grandfather arrived first. He sat by the window, reading a small book or watching people pass by. Eddie would bring his tea and say, "He'll be here soon." And every Sunday, James would come in, 10 or 15 minutes late, sometimes more. He would smile, say sorry, and his grandfather would smile back and say, I know. They would sit for an hour, talking and laughing. It was a quiet, simple tradition. James thought it would last forever, but then one Sunday, everything changed. Part 2. The Sunday that was different. That Sunday, James was late again, more than usual. He had stayed up too late the night before, watching videos on his phone, telling himself he still had time. The morning passed quickly, and before he realized it, he was already 30 minutes behind. When he finally arrived at the cafe, the sun was shining through the windows like always. The little bell above the door rang softly as he walked in. But something was different. The usual table by the window was empty. There was no book on the table, no teacup, no grandfather. James stood still for a moment, confused. He looked around. Sarah gave him a small nod, and Mia quickly looked down. Something in the air felt heavy. Then Eddie walked over slowly. He wasn't smiling this time. He placed a gentle hand on James's shoulder. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "James," he said, "I'm so sorry, son. Your grandfather won't be coming today." James blinked. He didn't understand at first. He passed away last night," Eddie continued. "He had a heart problem. Quiet, peaceful, but sudden." The words didn't land right away. They floated in the air, slow and heavy. James sat down at their table without saying a word. Eddie sat across from him, just for a moment, something he never did during work hours. "I know how much he loved these Sundays with you," Eddie said. "He talked about you all the time. He was proud." James nodded, but tears had already started to fill his eyes. He had been late again, and now there would be no next time. He kept staring at the empty chair, and in that chair, he saw every moment he had missed. Every minute he thought didn't matter. He thought he would have more Sundays. He thought his grandfather would always be there, waiting. But life doesn't wait. Part 3. Memories and Missed Moments. James didn't move for a long time. He just sat there, watching the empty chair across from him. It felt wrong too, quiet, too still. That chair had always been full of life. Now it was just empty. He remembered the first time they came to the cafe. He was just a boy, holding his grandfather's hand. The cafe had seemed big back then, like a new world. Back then, Eddie still had a darker beard. Sarah and Mia hadn't started working yet. They were just in high school, dreaming of college. But his grandfather had always been there, smiling, talking about books, about music, about life. Even as James grew older and life got busy, his grandfather kept coming every Sunday, waiting, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching people pass by the window. James remembered how many times he had said, "Just 5 more minutes," while scrolling on his phone. How many times he had rushed in with an apology, and his grandfather had only smiled and said, "It's okay, I like waiting." But now he knew it wasn't okay. He had thought there would always be more time, more Sundays, more second chances. Sarah came over quietly and placed a cup of coffee in front of him. On the house, she whispered, her eyes kind. James gave her a small nod. He couldn't speak yet. The cafe was still the same. The smell of coffee, the soft jazz music, the quiet laughter from another table. But for James, everything had changed. He felt a deep ache in his chest, an ache, not just for the man he had lost, but for all the time he had wasted. Eddie returned, placing a small paper bag on the table. He left this with us, Eddie said. Said it was for you. Told me to give it to you next Sunday, I guess. He planned ahead. James opened the bag with trembling hands. Inside was a small book, The Little Prince. It was one of his grandfather's favorites. Inside the front cover, there was a note. James, life moves fast, but the people you love are always worth your time. See you in every Sunday breeze. Grandpa. James closed his eyes. The tears came silently. He had missed so many moments, but now he knew what really mattered. He wouldn't waste time again. Part 4. A Quiet Promise. James sat with the little book in his hands for a long time. The pages were soft and worn. His grandfather had read this many times. He opened to the first chapter and began to read. The words were familiar, but today they felt different. They felt deeper, more personal, more true. In the background, Sarah and Mia were laughing quietly as they cleaned the counter. Eddie hummed a gentle tune as he wiped down a table. The cafe was full of little signs of life, just like his grandfather used to say. James looked around. Everything felt more alive. Or maybe he was finally paying attention. He took a slow breath, then another. And in that quiet moment, he made a promise to himself. I will be better with my time, he whispered. I will show up. I will be present. I will not waste the moments I have left. It was a simple promise, but strong. Like the kind of promise you make with your heart. The next Sunday, James came early. He chose the same table. 2 coffees. 1 chair empty. Sarah noticed. She gave him a soft smile and brought over a small plate with a warm croissant. Still saving the seat? She asked. James nodded. Every week. Eddie came by and patted him on the shoulder. He'd be proud of you, he said warmly. James smiled. I hope so. As the weeks passed, James began to change. He started calling his mom more often. He visited his sister. He took his niece to the park on Saturdays. He spent less time on his phone and more time looking people in the eyes. And every Sunday, he returned to the cafe. Same table, same seat, same quiet space where love still lived. Sometimes he brought someone new, a friend, a cousin, an old teacher. He shared stories about his grandfather. He listened more. He laughed more. The cafe employees noticed the change in him. Sarah once said, "You smile more now." James looked at her, surprised. Do I? Mia nodded. Yeah, it's nice to see. James thought about that, about how much had changed just because of one empty chair. Part 5. Sunday mornings. Forever. Time passed gently, like the soft breeze outside the cafe windows. Weeks turned into months. Seasons changed. But every Sunday morning, James returned to that same table. Sometimes he read from the little book his grandfather loved. Sometimes he simply sat in silence, letting memories come and go like the clouds above. Sometimes he smiled at nothing just because it felt good to sit in that place where love once waited. The cafe became more than just a place for coffee. It became a space of healing, a space of remembering, a space of living. The employees, Sarah, Mia, and Eddie, had become part of James's life now. They were no longer just workers behind a counter. They were friends, companions, witnesses to the quiet change that had happened inside him. One morning, as James walked in, Eddie greeted him with his usual smile. "Morning, my friend. Your table's ready." James nodded. He placed 2 cups down again, one for him, one for his grandfather. It had become a ritual, not out of sadness, but out of love. Later that day, a boy came into the cafe with his father. The boy stared at the empty chair at James's table. "Is someone sitting there?" he asked curiously. James smiled. "In a way, yes. Someone very special." The boy didn't quite understand, but he smiled back. Then James leaned over to the father and said softly, "Spend the time. Sit with him. These moments go by faster than we think." The father nodded. He looked at his son with a little more care. James had learned something his grandfather tried to show him with every patient smile, every quiet wait, every full cup of coffee. It wasn't about the coffee. It wasn't even about being on time. It was about being present, truly present, while we still can. That empty chair? It would never truly be empty, because James had filled it with love, memory, and a promise that he now kept, week after week. And in doing so, he reminded others of something simple and true. Time is short, but love is long. So show up, be there. Don't let the chair go empty, while it still can be filled.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you won't miss future videos that'll help you practice and level up your English.